Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find my work at MEC Sharks and on Twitter at Sheng_Peng.
And I'm Keegan McNally. You can find me on Twitter at halfwall_hockey, my website, half-wallhockey.com, or at San Jose Hockey Now. It's another week of the off-season.
But this might be the first dead week in a while. We've had so much news with the Sharks the last couple of weeks. Askarov, Cody, Ceci trade, right? And so credit to Mike, credit to the Sharks for keeping things interesting throughout the offseason. But we have a very, very special guest today. We have Tyler Toffoli. He's the Sharks' biggest, most expensive free agent signing ever. He's a 3-time 30-goal scorer, so have him on. Oh, unfortunately, did not have him on. I interviewed him before he walked the Pride Parade. Would have loved to have asked him about that. Credit to you, props to you, Tyler, for participating in that. But when we did talk to him, we had a lot of fun. We talked about him playing with Logan Couture and Cody Ceci with the Ottawa 67's back in the day. We talked about the Great Kings Sharks playoff battles. Tyler Toffoli was a big part of that on the Kings side, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Talked to him about forming a new 70's line with Macklin, Celebrini, and William Eklund. And finally, we talk about his not safe for work nickname.
I love it. This is actually one of the rare interviews that I wasn't part of, so I'm going to be watching it while I uploaded it, and so I'm going to probably watch it while you all watch it. So I actually have no idea what he says, including his not safe for work nickname. Although I may have been hinted at what that is. So, but hopefully you all stick around for that. It's always good to have him on the show, and also I think it was before the Askarov trade, so I don't think you asked about Askarov.
No, I didn't. Yeah,
you did ask him about Ceci. So.
Yeah. Oh, there's Mushu in the back there.
Mushu is adjusting her position.
Mushu is in the building.
She is getting comfortable for another episode of the San Jose Hockey Now podcast.
She's assaulting my pillow.
Well, she's got to get comfy, you know? She's like, this is not it. This is it. Hold on. We should give her a moment to get situated. Nope. What?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
After ruining my pillow, she's like, forget it.
She's like, this is fine right now. I'm still waiting. She's going to sit down. Just wait. Oh, it's so close, guys. Oh, she sat down. Oh, my gosh. All right. We have Tyler Toffoli interview. We're going to talk a little bit about the fallout of the Askarov trade, I guess. Some of the articles that have been released from the Nashville end, which was something that I think I mentioned when we had this was I'd be curious what the Nashville side of this all was or what Trotz would say afterwards. So interesting stuff that they had said. We're going to discuss some roster battles, including our favorite roster
most
battles.
exciting, maybe? Yeah, favorite, maybe not right word. Yeah, kind of the ones that are most intriguing to us.
Yeah, the ones where this guy could be going to the Barracuda or staying on the Sharks, basically. And then finally, we're going to mention the projected timeline for Logan Couture and Matt Benning in terms of their injuries. So it's I wouldn't say it's an action-packed week, but it is going to be an interesting. It's
definitely not an action-packed
week. There's still fallout. It's been like 5-6 days from the Askarov trade now, and we're all kind of in this world where the Sharks made this big swing. This feels kind of like the first big step forward for Mike Grier in terms of what he's trying to build, right? Like he's trading actual futures for Askarov's still a future, but he's trading younger pieces for slightly older pieces, which is interesting to me. You know, like we've had, we had the Ceci and Emerson kind of younger for older, but this feels like a little bit different. He's trying to advance the timeline a touch, it feels like.
Right. I think you alluded to it too, that he's targeting things now instead of just throwing shit on the wall. The trade up for the number 11 pick, right? Because targeting a defenseman, wanted to get into a higher caliber, higher class of defenseman, right? And he achieved that. I think another part that I find interesting in all this too is like, you look at and I mean this in the best way possible. Like when you're kind of building a team like a video game team, like he's got the positions down. He's got a center, he's got some defensemen, now he's got a goalie.
Yeah, he does.
Like he's built a potential wagon on paper. And of course on paper doesn't mean anything, but at every position, right, there's something interesting now.
Yeah, it's you want to build from the net out, as they say. And I don't know if that's still an adage in the NHL, but it used to be. It used to be you try to get your franchise goalie and then go from there. Maybe that's not so much the case these days, but it's going with the old model, it seems like. But Nashville had some things to say about the trade as well. There was an article that was put out this week from the Nashville media side. I don't think it was actual Nashville media, but
no, I think it was. I believe it was a Tennessean and Alex Doherty. I believe he had a story that spoke. He spoke with Mitch Korn, the Nashville, I believe, director of goaltending, and probably Trotz was quoted. Well, was quoted in it. I'm not sure if it was interviewed specifically for the story, but it was basically Nashville says that they kind of laid out a plan for Askarov, right? And that's what that story is about.
Yeah, I kept reading through the story to see if there was the plan, and the plan wasn't actually mentioned. It just kind of
the specifics of it was a little lacking, I would say.
Yeah, they kind of just said they had this plan for Askarov in terms of his development for the next year, and that they're not going to get to implement it now that he has been traded.
Yeah, what I took from it is I saw a lot of reaction online that I thought there was a little bit of jumping to conclusions there where they talk about, well, the plan is to have him sit behind Saros for 8 years. I'm fairly certain that's not what Nashville proposed to Askarov. That makes no sense. Probably, and this kind of ties into what I thought when I was just speculating on the trade a couple months ago or a month ago, was that it made way more sense for Askarov to back up Saros for a year or two and then for Nashville to trade him, because historically we talk about Corey Schneider, Vancouver Canucks to the Devils for the 9th overall pick. That's after he was Roberto Luongo's understudy for, I think, about 3 years there. Semyon Varlamov is another guy who went for a lot, right? And he played, I think, 50-plus games with the Capitals before he got traded to Colorado, and he was going to be the number one guy for a long time in Colorado, right? And Askarov goes against that model because Askarov only played 3 NHL games before the Predators played him. And I think that lowered probably Askarov's value when the trade happened. And I wonder what, I'm sure Nashville will wonder what Askarov's value could have been if he had backed up Saros for a couple of years there. And we don't know all the details of it. It is curious that they signed Wedgwood. I wonder if they had already laid things out to Askarov before July 1st. Look, we want you to do this. We want you to back up. Or maybe Nashville was still a little bit where we think you need another year in Milwaukee for sure. And so we're going to sign Wedgwood and obviously extend Charles and put them in front of you. And maybe that's what he objected to. So I think there's a lot of details that are still lacking. The one thing I'm fairly certain of, though, is that I don't think Nashville in their right mind would have laid out a plan that said, hey, here's a plan where he can sit behind UC Saros for 8 years. That sound good to you? So that's the one thing I'm fairly certain of. But anyway.
But then what would, I guess, I guess he looked at that plan, or he was presented that plan, because you imagine they wouldn't trade him without showing him that plan.
Right, I'm sure, yeah.
And then said no. So you're right. Was it like, I'm going to be a backup for the foreseeable future, maybe? And then he just got pissed off at that?
I don't know. This is me just speculating. We still haven't talked with Askarov yet.
Sure.
I know that he has not arrived in San Jose yet, though he is expected to arrive by training camp. He's still in Russia, from what I understand. But I would guess, this is again just pure speculation, but I would guess that maybe he might have objected to the fact that it wasn't like he basically had no chance of the starting job. Yeah. So maybe that upset, that was, or not upset him, but something that didn't make him happy. That no matter what he does, even if he's backing up at a high level, if Saros is healthy and playing relatively well, that's his net. And so maybe that Askarov wanted an opportunity to go somewhere that he could get the job, like in San Jose. Granted, Askarov may still be blocked in San Jose, but you don't hear him saying, "I will not report to the Barracuda." Right. Yep. That's something that we asked Mike Rear about, and that doesn't seem to be an issue at all. And what's the difference here and between Nashville? Well, here it's a closer to a pure meritocracy.
Sure.
We talked about this during the Mercy podcast. During training camp, Saros can have an 85 save percentage. Askarov can have a 95 save percentage in training camp and exhibition games. And guess who is going to be Nationals opening night starter, right? Whereas if this happens in San Jose, Askarov puts up a 95 save percentage in preseason, and Blackwood and Vanacek put up an 85. I think that there's a chance that Askarov will be the Sharks opening night starter. I think he probably would be in that case if it's that the difference is that far apart. And so I think that could have been it. The other part of it is that related to it, that he just wants a shot at being the NHL number one guy. So even if you don't sign Wedgwood and you give him the backup job, that's still not giving him a shot at the number one job. And if they had signed Wedgwood before, and that just is another barrier in front of Askarov. And I don't know. They may have presented this. It would have made more sense for them to outgas. This is all, again, pure guess. It would have made more sense if they presented this plan to Askarov before July 1st. And once they understood before July 1st that he wasn't buying into this, then okay, then, well, we've already made our decision about, I'm sure they had already made their decision about Saros. And the Wedge one was like, okay, he's our top prospect is not happy with the idea of backing up, even though there's a good reason for him to back up on our side, and even for himself, there's a good reason too to build his value. If kind of playing devil's advocate, if Askarov backed up and played 50 plus games the next 2 years and excelled, right, like Schneider did in Vancouver, right, all of a sudden a lot more teams are knocking on the door now. So it's a win-win, right? Nashville gets more in a trade. Askarov has kind of more locations to go to because the NHL has seen that he can handle at least a certain number of NHL games. There's more evidence that you can give him the number one job from the get-go, which we don't really quite have here. But anyway, that's just me speculating, but that's what makes the most sense though. Again, no way Nashville says, hey, back up Askarov for or Saros for 8 years, be happy with that. And most likely I'm just again guessing that I think he just wanted a place that he has the chance to be the number one immediately, just based purely on his performance, which wasn't gonna be the case in Nashville unless Saros really underperformed or gets hurt.
Yeah, and I kind of like that. I kind of like the fact that he has so much confidence. Yeah, I kind of like that he has a lot of confidence in his game, that he is not just going to play I'm going to be 25 years old before I have a starting net kind of thing that almost all goaltenders go through, right? Like, nowadays, it's very, very rare to be a super young goalie starter in the NHL. And he is kind of being like, I don't agree with that. I want to go to a place where I can actually have my own net. So
right, immediately.
I mean, if he played well enough, I imagine that moving one of Vitek or Mackenzie Blackwood wouldn't be the end of the world if they felt like Askarov was really ready.
So. Right. And that opportunity, he does have that opportunity. I'll tease something that story I'm putting out. I spoke with Thomas Spear about Askarov today, and that's sort of one of the things that we talked about, that it's the net there's an open competition here where you couldn't say that in Nashville. Maybe that's all Yaroslav, again, we haven't spoken to him yet, but maybe that's all he wanted. It wasn't that he objected to going to the minors. If he gets outperformed in the preseason, he'll probably know if he got outplayed by Mackenzie Blackwood and Vitek Vanacek. But if he doesn't get outplayed, and again, in Nashville, it didn't matter in some ways how he performed because he was not going to get the number one seat there. So that'll be my guess. And again, my guess is that Nashville's plan just makes perfect sense, was just to have him back up for a year or two and prove he could do that, and then they would have traded him, and that would have been a win-win for both sides.
Mm-hmm. And Askarov said no.
Maybe. Yeah, we don't know, but I would guess that, again, that sticking point is just that the chance to be the number one, at least the chance to be. I did speak with a scout about the trade, and one of the things that he mentioned that I probably not going to put in the story is that he, like you mentioned, that Askarov did not go down the sort of stereotypical good soldier path. Okay, I'll back up for a year or two. I'm going to understudy and work my way toward my shot, which if he had done, no one would have faulted him for that and faulted him for waiting on his turn like a lot of guys do. And then when his turn comes after he proves it a year or two as a backup, again, he would have maybe there would be more teams maybe after him. And there were a lot of teams after him too. That's another part that was reported too, that at least five other teams were after him. I don't remember all of them, but Colorado, I think, was mentioned. Maybe Utah. I don't remember the other teams, but
yeah.
New Jersey was another one of them too. But anyway, I think that this scout said that I'm not faulting him. This scout can be an old school kind of scout at times, but in this case, it's like, yeah, like Nashville, there just wasn't a long-term future there. There was a short-term future and a good short-term future there. It would have been a good place for him to build up his stats in terms of like he plays like those 2 years as a backup behind what should be a pretty good team. That's a good way for him to build his resume. So it wasn't like Nashville was offering him crap, but he feels like he's ready. He feels like he's ready for at least the opportunity to compete for number one. And so he used his leverage.
Yeah.
And in the end, we'll see. But in the end, it looks like it's a pretty good trade for both sides. The Sharks traded from positions of strength at center. They had an extra first round pick, but Nashville wanted a center prospect. That's what they said. And they got good value back for Askarov. So it looks like a win-win there.
And Nashville got it. It's probably, I wouldn't say as much as they could have, but even if like Askarov is backing up every game for UC Saros in the next 2 years, and that's ignoring the fact that they signed Scott Wedgwood, like, are they still going to get a mostly wide open first round pick and, a good center prospect that's only a year out from his draft? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, that's good. Are you comparing the package the Sharks sent to what, let's say, a Corey Schneider got? Corey Schneider got the 9th pick straight up.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the Sharks offer that became Bo Horvat, so a pretty good player actually. But,
hey, there it is.
I think Varlamov was like it was like maybe a top 15 pick too, and a second round pick. So
and
you
Martin
can argue
Jones
the Sharks package
like
was pretty
14th
close.
or 15th, I think.
It ended up being, the 14th or 15th pick there too, I believe. Yeah, I think you're right on that.
Because that was that year they had that 13, 14, 15. So,
right.
Or 14, 15, 16, one of the two, anyway.
So if you compare that, you can actually say the Sharks overpaid, but as I mentioned, they overpaid from areas of strength. So, and they addressed the direct weakness. So again, I will always, some people will we talked about this all last week, that the Sharks gave up a lot, but I love this trade. I love the swing. I will never say anything bad about this trade because it makes sense. It makes sense for what the Sharks needed. It makes sense with this guy's talent.
Yep.
Yeah, there are some questions about him. There's a reason why Nashville picked Saros over him, but for everything that we know, I think it is a perfectly sensible deal.
It fits with the timeline as well, and I really appreciate that. They didn't choose an 18-year-old goaltender. They didn't go after
right. We talked about that. It wouldn't have made any sense, because you have no idea. That's the voodoo part of it. Whereas here, you pick the very developed, very talented already.
Yeah, you've already gotten past so many layers of development. So I still appreciate the trade.
Right.
It is a risk. I want everybody to realize that goaltending is voodoo, and Askarov could, bust. Like he could try his, and then this year just be terrible for the Sharks and Barracuda, and it's possible. But you hope that the draft pedigree, the talent, everything wins out, and in the end, and is also his drive to compete, wins out, because he is a competitor.
It's hard to see this being a bust because he is so talented. Everyone talks about just how quick, how athletic, how controlled he is too. He's not wild, and how he reads plays, and even his compete, right, which has it's a double-edged sword. There's a negative side to it, but there's also the positive side of his compete too. So I think the question, this is how good a prospect he is. It's not a question of whether or not he is going to be an NHLer or if he's going to be capable of playing a lot of games. It's just how good can he be?
Yeah.
When I talk about, I put out an article about his maturity and things like that. It's not about whether or not he can be good enough to be a Shark starter. It's about, well, will the emotions get the best of him at some critical time in the playoffs in the future and kind of cap sort of how good he can be. So the question is almost not if he'll be good, but how great. Will he just be good or will he be great? And that's where the things about the emotions and that can stop that can pull him down from greatness.
And if you look at first round goalies, only first round goalies, people always say that goalies are voodoo and goalies are unreliable and drafting goalies kind of like a crapshoot. But if you look at first round goalies specifically, and I did this a few years ago, most of them actually make it. Most of them are actually pretty darn good. Like Vasilevsky and Ilya Samsonov and Jack Campbell even eventually became a starter in the NHL, even though he had a long road. But most goalies that are drafted in the first round, Spencer Knight, become pretty good overall. I think it takes a lot of talent for teams to eventually say, yes, you have it. And Askarov wasn't like 29, he was like 11. So Askarov definitely has everything going for him to make it and a wide open net to play for. He just has a very bad defense in front of him. So he needs to not be rattled in the next 2 years.
Right. And that's part of, again, the maturity part, which I think is a fair question because, again, that's the difference between good and great. I did look up the teams that were interested. Elliot Friedman reported that besides Colorado and New Jersey, also Montreal and Utah were among those that were in this chase. So I just wanted to mention that because I had mentioned that at first.
Yeah, and that's interesting because Montreal and Utah have, like, Montreal is Montembeault, who's been okay.
Montreal's got Fowler, right? I don't know if Utah's got a top goaltending prospect of, not that I can think of off the top of my head, but
Hrabal? Didn't Hrabal go to them?
Oh, you're right. I think he might have. Oh no, I thought wait. Yeah, I think you're right. I think
he was
you're
Coyotes, right. And then he is now a Utah.
You're right.
He is. Yes,
right.
they have
okay,
Hrabal.
So they have, and then
he did pretty well.
Yeah, then New Jersey, maybe not, right? And Colorado's interesting because Colorado just drafted Ilya Nabokov, so that's kind of interesting. But I will say, though, that does speak to that. I think that Askarov, again, no one questions the talent. Just that in all those systems that already have top goaltending prospects, that all the ones that we mentioned, that Askarov would still unquestionably be the top goaltending prospect of that system.
Agreed. Yeah. He would only be like competitive to Jesper Wallstedt essentially, and maybe Dustin Wolf.
Or Wolf, right? Yeah. And so so that's kind of interesting about what the Sharks probably did overpay in terms of overall value, but they could afford to, and also too they needed a goalie, whereas Colorado doesn't need to send the equivalent of 2 first-round picks for Askarov, or Utah doesn't need to, or Montreal doesn't need to.
Well, the good news in all of this is they can use that fancy plan they had for Askarov and give it to Magnus Corona, and he's going to become.
I think he'll be thrilled with that.
NHL elite goaltender that he can.
I think he will. Magnus will be thrilled with that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like from his perspective, yes, he got traded out of San Jose, and I'm sure he loved being in San Jose, but like he's going to a veritable goaltending factory essentially, and one of the not most legendary, but one of the premier goalie coaches in the world.
That had to be a selling point when Nashville was selling, hey, we brought back Mitch Korn, and you're gonna be able to work under him. So that had to be a selling point.
Yeah, so good for Magnus. Like hopefully he kills it in the AHL and does well.
Good for everybody here. I think everybody here finds themselves in maybe a better situation in some way or another. So even Edstrom was not lost, right? But he definitely wasn't as talked about a prospect as he will be in Nashville too. So he'll get maybe a little more attention, at least from the fans. At least he'll get a little more love and attention when you're not competing with Macklin, Celebrini, and Will Smith, and Sam Dickinson, and all that too. So
I think we've talked about or maybe I mentioned it with Edstrom, but just players that seem like they fit a certain team, and Edstrom feels like he fits the Nashville Predators.
Right. No,
I think I mentioned that last time, but
he does. He does seem like it.
Okay, so Yaroslav Askarov. This is a good segue because the training camps are about to. Well, I will say about to. Is in like it's still August somehow.
Right. But Labor Day's coming. After Labor Day,
coming.
the players start coming in. They start doing more, or larger captain skates, that sort of thing.
Yep, and we're gonna have very an interesting training camp because we brought in a ton of veterans this year, and we brought in we as in I didn't know Mike Greer brought in a ton of defenders as well to kind of revamp this defense. So we have kind of battles in the forward, defense, and goalie positions. So Sheng, I'm going to give you the first one, and if you choose this one I was going to choose, then I will think of a different one while you choose. So why don't you pick your favorite roster battle, and what do you think is the outcome of that battle?
Okay, you're not going to like this because I think I will have chosen the one that you chosen because I'm going to talk about a guy near and dear after your heart. Oh. And so I wonder if Gushin and Bordelot, I think that they kind of belong together here.
It's not the one I'm going to choose, by the way.
Perfect. I wonder if they'll be good enough to be their opening night. I think I was speaking, actually, this story is coming out in a couple of days too. I spoke with a different scout about the young Sharks players, the established ones like Eklund, Zetterlund, Thrun, Mukumadulin, and what this scout is looking for from these players this coming year, kind of their second, third pro seasons or NHL seasons or whatever, right? And Bordelot and Gushin, what he said was interesting. I won't give it all away because I want you to read it, but he did say, here's one thing he just said that was pretty choice, that his guess with this sort of wave of Barracuda prospects, the ones that we've seen the last couple of years, he said, except for Eklund and Mukumadulin, that his guess is that all these other guys, there's a good chance that they're going to have to go elsewhere for their opportunity.
Interesting.
Because the Sharks are getting deep. And there's not going to be spots at center, obviously, because Celebrini and Smith are going to be filling those in. And even along the wing, you have Eklund, maybe Zetterlund. He likes Zetterlund more than I did another story about Zetterlund earlier this summer, talked to a different scout. This scout I talked with recently likes Zetterlund a little bit more. And maybe a Musty that you're saving a spot on the wing for in the future. You'll have Toffoli there as your hopefully your veteran sniper, all that kind of stuff for the duration of his contract. Yep. And so guys like Bordelot and Gushin, they really need to be in offensive roles to help you out, but will they be good enough to crack hopefully we're talking a playoff caliber Sharks top 9 in the future? And it starts this season, even though I don't think anybody expects this Sharks team to make the playoffs this season, but the top 9, the wings are getting tougher and tougher. You have a intense competition for, I guess, what would be your third line wings.
Yep.
There is a little more, I think, open competition for your top 6 wings, but they'll get filled quickly because top 6 wings are ready to Toffoli, Eklund, Zetterlund. And maybe there's one more spot there that a guy will play up a little bit, like a Cunnin or a Grundstrom or whatever, or that's a spot for a Gushin or Bordelot to take, or maybe Will Smith has to go on the wing somewhere. So that's somewhere where Bordelot or Gushin or both play so well that not only do they make it to the team on opening night, and it is worth mentioning again that both are waivers exempt, so that's good, but there are guys too that are close enough that they need NHL games too, especially Gushin, who hasn't had as much run as Bordelot. And so anyway, will either or both of those guys be so good that they solidify their place in the Sharks top 6? Like, one more word about this, like Zetterlund did last year, and granted it was for a very bad team, but Zetterlund was so good that they couldn't take him off of that. They couldn't take him off of that top 6 because he was better than what they had. And more competition this year for Bordelot and Gushin, but this is sort of what I'm curious about in camp, if they will show the pieces physically that they've worked on stronger, quicker, more compete, and that sort of thing. Right now, I'll give you this bit of insight too, just for you, because you love your boy Daniil, that this scout does still like Ushin more than Bordalo. Even though he did say Bordalo did show more last year at the end of the season, we all saw that, but he still likes Ushin sort of compete a little bit more than Bordalo. So there you go.
Yeah, I
Your
guess.
boy Goose.
Well, I like his compete. I just don't like, and I think I had said this for years, ever since he was drafted. I like Daniil's ideas, and I like his compete. It's like he wants to check, but he has no idea how to check. Like the guy is just, his physicality is like, it's not like he doesn't have the ideas. He just doesn't have the frame or the technique or anything to actually affect play physically.
Right.
And that's tough as a 5'9" winger to stick around the NHL.
Right. So the question for both those guys, Borlo and Gushin, is can they score enough points and contribute enough offense that you can overlook some defensive shortcomings?
Yeah, and you really just hope that Gushin just keeps playing the good soldier and wants to try and eventually find a role. But I do agree, it does become a little bit more difficult to find his spot on this roster.
Right.
With guys that are going to be playing third and fourth line minutes that are going to, minute munch and eat defensive minutes where Kushin's not going to be that. So he's going to need a little bit of luck, I think, with injuries or just a really, really good preseason. And he's just going to need to prove it. So.
Right. And what that scout said I found interesting about this wave of Barracuda prospects, only Eklund or Mukumadulin surviving. Hey, that hurts. You're going to lose some guys that you liked, but that's probably a good thing in the end because the best sort of cream of the crop survive. And so if that's a cream of the crop and some of these other guys don't quite make it, that means that sort of the in-between guys are hopefully better. And that makes a better team, a better Sharks team faster, and all that.
I do still have faith in Ethan Cardwell as well. I think there's still a role for him in the NHL eventually, and it feels like he's delayed in his development because he was drafted a year late and everything. So he still has many years before we're like ruling out Cardwell. I think as opposed to Bordalo and Gushin, it feels like the clock is kind of ticking this year a little bit. Even though they're not waivers eligible yet, it's coming. So
here's another that's not going to make the story. This scout at first did not realize that Bordalo was waivers exempt.
Yeah.
And so he made the sort of, this is where Bordalo is kind of, he's kind of a tweener guy. He definitely has skill, but is it enough for a top 6, top 9 role every night on a decent, average, good team? Right. So this scout said that, would anybody claim Bordalo on waivers? 50-50 in this scout's opinion. So I think that's interesting too. Even though Bordalo is waivers exempt, so it doesn't actually matter. It doesn't, but I think it gives you an idea though of how people in the league are seeing him. I guess
I would predict 100% that he would be claimed by the Pittsburgh Penguins, like a 100%. If it's Doug Wilson like pulling the strings in the background, he'd claim Thomas Bordalo. He would.
I don't know. So 50-50s.
Okay. Anyway, we'll see if he doesn't have to be.
He still has. It's not relevant.
Yeah, not this year at least. Next year or later on, if he hits that game mark, whatever it is that he needs to hit to be waivers eligible. I don't know. I kind of in agreement with you. I think both get sent down to the Barracuda.
Yeah, right. We didn't talk about predictions. Yeah, I suspect that will be the case. I'm not looking that they do make the team opening night. I'm just looking for obvious growth. Bordalo showed growth at the end of last season, still needs to do it. And Gushin, I thought last summer, I wanted to see more gains from him in terms of strength and quickness. And so hopefully I'll see that this offseason or this training camp.
Yeah. Still an extremely skilled player, and I really do enjoy it.
Both are.
It's interesting because they are the not the last, but they were heralded so much in the Sharks prospect pool that now both of them would probably be outside the top 10 if we did
I wonder. I got to think about that. I still might include them in the back half of the top 10, but I will say that, again, that's a good thing, though, because we were talking about, again, mentioned this before, Bortolo was a clear-cut number 2 prospect for a long time after Eklund.
He was.
And now we see that was more of a sign for how weak the system was, to be honest, because Eklund, at his best as a prospect, would be behind Celebrini, would be behind Smith, might be behind Askarov. Like, he would be a top 5, but it
wouldn't be 1 or 2.
And that's a good thing. That's nothing against Eklund. Eklund's an incredible player and was an incredible prospect, but you're okay. This just means you have better prospects, and you can afford to trade guys like a Edstrom, because you've got these are all good things to have, not just a good forward prospect or a great one, but to have the very best center prospect and the very best goaltending prospect. So these are all good things.
Yeah, good times are coming for the Sharks, even if Gushin has to make his name with a different team, and I will be a little sad. No, we'll see. We'll see.
One thing an agent told me that is another good sign is, he's like, yeah, we were talking about Askarov, and he was like, yeah, you actually have to worry that you have too many contracts coming up at the same time, too many RFAs, too many Celebrini, and that's actually a good problem. The Sharks haven't had a problem like this in a long time. Like, we have too many good players.
Askarov, Celebrini, and everybody all end at the same time. So, the roster battle that I'm looking at the most, and it does, I will say that we're not going to mention the Askarov one, but that is an interesting battle.
Goaltending. Okay,
I'm going with defense.
okay. I thought we were going position by position.
Okay. We can still mention Askarov at the end anyway. Okay. Why not? Let's, but I want to talk about the defense, because I think it's an interesting. There's like a clear top 8. It feels like for the Sharks, right? Like the left side, you've got Ferraro, Wallman, Vlasic, Henry Thrun, and Shakir Mukhamadullin, all left side.
Okay.
Some of them play left and right, obviously. That's 5 guys. And the right, you have Ceci, Ruta, and Benning in some order of 1, 2, 3. Probably that order.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, to me, it feels like the 8.
And then did you miss Vlasic as your 5th left-hander, I guess, right? That's
I thought I included Vlasic.
Maybe. Oh, did you? So it's 5 and 3. Anyway, go on.
So it's 5 and 3. So you've got 8. That's without injury. That's without any kind of hijinks or whatever, or claims or what, stuff that could happen, because defense ends up being one of the spots that you can get a guy off, like, because there's fewer spots in the lineup. There is probably a higher chance to get a defender off waivers in training camp than there is forward. Yeah. Emberson is a good example of it.
Last year.
So I really do wonder if they decide to keep both Thrun and Mukhamadullin at the end of training camp, and then run with like 13 forwards and 2 goalies, and just keep 8D like they did. I think they did that last year or 2 years ago.
Right. I think they did do that at times last year.
So I think that overall, I think it's time for Shakir Mukhamadullin. So I'm going to make a prediction that regardless, Mukhamadullin makes the opening night roster.
Okay.
That's my prediction. I don't have any other prediction but that. What do you think?
Oh, can I tease something else too about
you got it.
Tyler Toffoli interview that we tried to, he didn't know how to say Mukhamadullin's last name, and so I tried to work with him on that. So hijinks ensue. So
how bad was it?
Well, you'll find out.
All right, I will listen through. But yeah, I do wonder if they pull all 8 and just keep them up, or if they send one of Thrun or Mukhamadullin down, or does it really matter in the beginning anyway?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is obviously early to say, because the defense is not a forward. There's so many forwards that even with injuries,
sure,
that even with a couple injuries, you're still going to have that might just open the door for Bortolo or Gushin or something like that, right? Whereas on defense, we're talking 8 deep, so they can't afford too many injuries here or whatnot.
Sure.
But in terms of what I'm looking for in terms of defensive training camp battles, obviously Mukudulin's growth is a big part of it. Just how much did he grow as a player? Not necessarily he's huge already, 6'4", 6'5", so not about that, but stronger. He still want him to get stronger,
of course,
to battle down low. And so did he add a little bit of that to his game? Did he get stronger in the off season? That's a big part of it. And is he at a place where you can't keep him out of the lineup? And so I think there's a chance that, now I think about it, now we count the numbers, that maybe even Mukmadulin gets in ahead of Thrun. Maybe that could kind of make sense. And then you send Thrun down, and then Vlasic is your seventh guy, maybe, if everybody stays healthy throughout camp. So I think, though, for both young defensemen, that's going to be a big question mark. Like, can he be clearly better than what's in front of them? And granted, what's in front of them, the veterans, it's not the most intimidating bunch, but it should be a stronger, deeper group than it was last year.
Yes, Wallman got added, so the left side got like a tiny bit better.
Yeah.
But also the 3 games that Mukmadulin did come up, he looked good.
He did.
Like, he looked like he was kind of ready, and then the whole year he looked pretty good throughout the AHL.
I think too that there might have been something where the team was so bad last year that they didn't want to. Defense is so something you want to be so careful of, and that's why I do give Thrun a lot of credit that he was able to. This is a David Quinnism, but that Thrun and Eklund, they were able to develop still in a very tough situation. And not a lot of players could have done that. A guy last year that I don't think did well in a similar position was Ohotiuk. He was bad. And I think part of the reason why he was bad was because the Sharks were really bad, and he beat himself up over mistakes. And that's what I understand anyway. That's what I've heard. Whereas guys like Eklund and Thrun, they still beat themselves up, but they were able to brush it off a little bit too. It didn't stay with them as much. And so give Thrun a lot of credit there, but yeah, but it won't be as sort of a given that he's in the lineup. And I think going to the point of Mukmadulin and maybe why protecting him a little bit last year, this team should be better and better in goal, obviously, better up front. That's really, really important. They're going to get a lot more support from their forwards defensively that I think we're lacking, because last year's team was built, I think, a little too offensively that didn't produce. And so it's
offensively.
It was offense that didn't produce, so it became offensive, right?
Yeah, offensive.
And anyway, I think that they're going to get a lot more help this year. And so, yeah, I guess could go back to your prediction. I would think that Mukmadulin should be their opening night for the Sharks.
And they added Wallman and Ceci as possible, like, offensive leaning defenseman. Ceci is more of a two-way guy and probably shouldn't be on a power play, but he might be. And Wallman probably will be on a power play for the Sharks, but I feel like Mukmadulin has a little bit more power play usage than Thrun does.
Yeah, for sure.
And I feel like that helps him.
You want to see Mukmadulin, in terms of like what you're hoping to see, you want him to take control of PP2 or PP1 if he's given those minutes during training camp and during the preseason, because he should be a guy that puts up a decent amount of points. Not a top power play quarterback guy, but a consistent power play presence.
Yeah, and that gives I think he makes it based on that alone, even though it's going to be tough. But they do, or at least going to carry 7. So one of Thrun or Mukmadulin should make it, and I'm going to predict Mukmadulin, but we'll see. Or they carry both. So it's, I guess, not the most interesting of roster battles.
I still going to look, though. I still wonder. I wonder if they still target somebody off of waivers.
Sure.
Just because there might be somebody available, and they're going to have first pick on waivers.
Yeah, or Jimmy Schultz makes it as the the number 8D, or Lucas Carlson.
Yeah, would not predict that.
It's going to be Gannon Larocque, and all of us are gonna. No, I'm kidding.
That'd be great.
That'd be amazing.
Great. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes a guy comes out of nowhere, you don't expect it, and remember Jake Middleton a few years ago. Sure. What was it? The 2022 21-22 season, right? The last Bob Bugner season, he kind of came out of nowhere there, and he made it the team opening night, and he just kept playing better and better, and looked good next to Erik Karlsson, and now he's making $3 million a year or whatever. So
yeah, that's the interesting bit about defenders is they can just find a pairing that like works for them, and they slide in, they're comfortable, and they can eat minutes with whoever they're playing with, or multiple people. But if they get comfortable, they can look fine. It depends on the defender. Not all of them can, but certain guys that have the right profile, the right skating ability and size and all that, they can just kind of fit and be an NHL defender. It's interesting. All right. Our last roster battle is Askarov versus Vitek Vanacek. And
well, let's do a
Blackwood.
too early prediction. Who is your opening night starter?
Mackenzie Blackwood.
You're going to go Blackwood?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Blackwood. I still think that Mike Greer has a soft spot for him. And not that matters at this point in his career for the Sharks, but I think that he's shown enough and he's been consistent on a inconsistent team enough that they give him some leash no matter what to begin the year. I think
I will say Blackwood too, but I think Askarov makes opening night, and I think maybe they try to pass Vanacek. This is just too early, too bold. I've not seen any of these guys in training camp yet, so I have no idea where Vitek is with his injury, but I'm just that's just my sort of wild speculation. I may change my mind next week, but
I like it. I'm going to go with. So Vitek through waivers is what you're saying.
They're going to try, yeah. And I think they'll pass him through because his injuries last year, and he makes a bit more than Blackwood, so I think they're going to be successful in it. So
that is an interesting thing to do with Capo Kakinen, I guess, because they traded Capo Kakinen for Vitek, and then Vitek hasn't ever played a game for the Sharks so far. And I guess Kakinen signed.
He's in Winnipeg, but Winnipeg is in an interesting position where Winnipeg has 3 NHL caliber goaltenders. Obviously, Hellebuyck's going to play the lion's share of games, but I think they have Eric Comrie and Capo Kakinen. So unless they plan on carrying 3 goalies to start the season, then one of those guys is going to be on waivers too. Comrie or Kakinen, not Hellebuyck.
Yeah, no, Hellebuyck for sure. We should claim that guy. He's pretty good. And then we could have our own Askarov versus Hellebuyck.
I'm sure that'll make Askarov laugh.
Anyway, it's interesting because the Jake Middleton trade ends up being absolutely nothing if Vitek Vanacek ends up being nothing. Although Furlong came out of the Middleton trade, so either way. It doesn't. It's all a sunk cost at this point. But it'd be interesting if Vitek Vanacek was waived before he ever plays a game for the Sharks.
It's interesting, and I don't want to discredit Vitek because Vitek before last year and his injuries and not playing well, he was outperforming Mackenzie Blackwood. He pushed Mackenzie Blackwood out of New Jersey, and he did. Also started in Washington for a couple of years for a pretty good Capitals team. So actually, he is the most. Of the 3 Sharks goalies we're talking about, Askarov, Blackwood, and Vanacek, Vitek is the most sort of consistent, the most reliable of that group. And if this time last training camp, if the Sharks had all 3 goalies, I think the prediction would be that Vanacek would be the starter because Blackwood was obviously coming off years of inconsistency, and Askarov might still be considered a little young for the number 1 job as of last year. So I don't want to take anything away from Vitek. Vitek may be fully recovered and really good, and he may be the number 1. He may be the opening night starter for the Sharks.
And I can't remember who it was, but I think Vitek was the guy that it was either Samson. No, it was either Samsonov or Grubauer. Eventually was the reason why Washington got rid of one of them. I think it was. Samsonov.
It was. Yeah, I think Vanacek was a part of that. I think it was Samsonov. Yes.
And then they traded for him back after he got taken by Seattle.
Yeah. Right.
So
they traded a 2nd round pick too, so it was not a nothing trade.
Yeah, and so Vanacek does have some. I don't know what the word is.
Vanacek is healthy. He's good.
He has some league clout, I guess.
Yeah, he's shown it. It's just the question of his health, and like I said, he makes a little bit more money. So I think those are the things, his barriers. But in terms of, there's a reason why he earns more money because historically he's been a better goalie than than Blackwood, and obviously he's more proven than Askarov.
Mm-hmm. They play goaltending carousel, and they waive Vanacek. They claim Capo Kakinen, and they put Kakko in the minors. They play goaltending carousel. That's the best. I think, I don't know. I would love it if Askarov made the Sharks. I think they might want to see what they have in the tandem between the two.
All right, you're gonna play it safe. You're gonna start Askarov with the Kuda.
I think so.
Okay,
I think
that's a good
they
call.
play it safe.
Perfectly reasonable call.
But you never know. He might be amazing, and I would love it. But that's our last roster battle, I guess, for now.
Yeah, it's just really important for me though to not discount Vanacek though, because I think we,
of course,
are all kind of we like Blackwood a lot. He's a great personality too, but it's sort of that recency, and we actually saw him last year, and he was incredible at times last year. But historically, though, you got to give Vanacek a lot more credit.
Yep, and I do think it's still funny that Askarov is the longest contracted goalie for the Sharks right now. It just still makes me giggle every time. All right, our last bit of news is the injury updates of Logan Couture and Matt Benning that Mike Greer answered in a recent availability.
Right after the Askarov trade.
We'll call it good news and bad news. How's that?
Sure.
I don't want to misquote him, but I think Logan Couture was originally scheduled to start skating in July of some description.
Granted, that was a projection from the end of last season. So that was a projection from April. So I want to make that clear that was the plan back then. And I guess it hasn't happened as far as we understand it.
Yep.
Which is not great, but I don't want it to seem that was like a plan. Like maybe they changed it in May and we just didn't know about it.
A day later. We never know.
Right. But
yeah, but it is still bad that it's
right. It's concerning.
A month and a half after that deadline, and he's still not skating. It's almost September.
Right.
I wonder how long this goes on for in terms of like how long he has to take to recover from this injury if he's going to get back on the ice. Like even if he does start skating, how long is the recovery after that kind of thing?
Right. I'm trying to recall. This is just a guess from last year, but I think he had a good couple of months of skating before it was even serious about him getting back in the game. So I would guess basically he needs to have a training camp and needs to have like a month or two. So if we're just to guess from that he doesn't go right at the beginning of training camp, that they take it slow, that
November, maybe December.
Yeah, at best December.
At best.
Unless they feel comfortable with him ramping it up. I don't know. They may have a different plan here where they're just going to have him ramp it up. They're just resting it instead of building him. I have no idea. We haven't talked with Logan about it, and we didn't ask Mike in detail about it because it was after the Askarov trade. Yep. But of course, though, the best guess is that he is not going to be ready for training camp or the beginning of regular season. I mean, what else can you guess if a guy's not skating on August 28th?
And and the long-term future, I guess, of Couture is in question with the Saints.
Yep.
With the Sharks. So, kind of bummed, but...
Yeah, it is. It is. Better days are ahead, right? And he may or may not be a part of it.
Yeah. Okay, good news. Matt Benning is hopefully going to be ready by training camp.
That's what Greer said, and that's good. And maybe that's what gave him some confidence to trade Emberson too, that they feel like they have 8 NHL caliber defensemen here right now, and they may still add somebody on waivers. Whereas if you didn't think Benning would be healthy, then you're down to 7 if you traded Emberson. So maybe that gave them a little more peace of mind to trade Emberson off. And not that Matt Benning's not the most exciting of players, but I think we mentioned this last week that if they can get him back healthy, and you add Ceci and Ferraro and Wallman and along with Ruda, that you have 5 guys that are, I would say, NHL defensemen. They may not be high-end NHL defensemen, but they are actual NHL defensemen that can play on most teams, even if it's in bottom pairing role, but they would play on most teams, even good ones, right? And that's going to be a big improvement from last year, where basically they trotted out Ferraro and Ruda, and that's pretty much it for the kind of the reliability, dependability, consistency, veteran, kind of all that, all rolled into one, into a specific group of players.
Yeah, it's a more reliable NHL steady defense, I guess. If Matt Benning is back to his regular form, but that was only one season, and that wasn't even last season. So we do have to see if he is back to that level of play as well. We are also getting pretty close to, not rookie face-off, but the prospect tournament. We are.
That is rookie face-off.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought it was called something else.
Yeah,
rookie
September
face-off.
13th. September 13th.
So we are going to be having some more news, and also to give a little bit of a sneak preview. Next week, hopefully, we should be having a mailbag episode, which will incorporate all your questions, because I'm sure after this very busy offseason by the Sharks, including drafting our probable franchise center, Macklin Celebrini, that you guys are going to have a lot of questions, and we want to hear them before the start of training camp. So look out on Twitter, look out on San Jose Hockey Now for a thread where you can post your questions. But for now, that's all we got, guys. It's going to be a shorter episode this week. You guys should stick around for the Tyler Toffoli interview. It's great. And we will see you all next week. You got anything else, Sheng?
No, that's it.
All right, y'all. Hope you have a good week. Bye.
Bye, guys. We've got a really special guest here today. He is the Sharks' biggest, most expensive free agent signing ever. He is a certified sniper, a 3-time dirty goal scorer. He also won a Stanley Cup with the Kings in 2014. Welcome, Tyler Toffoli.
How we doing?
Very good, man. Very good. Well, first, I wanted to start you off with, let's go back in the past year a little bit. Let's start with your Ottawa 67 days. And there are a lot of Sharks connections there. Obviously, your first year there with the Ottawa 67s was Logan Couture's last year. So do you have a favorite Logan Couture story from back in the day when you guys were kids?
No, I think he definitely brought me under his wing. He obviously being established player, great player in the OHL, and when I came in, they put me right beside him in the locker room, so we were cellmates for the season. And nice. I think I got hurt for a little while, but obviously for the most part was beside him, so I got to kind of see the ways and see how to move my life kind of forward when you're moving away from home. And he was a great guy for me, and like I said, took me under his wing. And it's funny, being back on the same team as him.
That's awesome. Well, even back then, I guess he was a leader. He was a captain of the Sharks cell, obviously. Well, I want to move forward a little bit, though. This might be a little funny then. So jumping ahead a little bit in your career, was it a little bit awkward going now to the Sharks-Kings playoff series rivalry? Was it a little awkward for you when Logan Couture and Drew Doughty, they were having their little war of words, we're not friends, whatever, all that was going on. So was that a little awkward for you, or did you just kind of laugh about it?
Oh, no, I think it's funny. I think at the end of the day, they're from pretty much the same hometown, and they skate and stuff in the summers, or they used to at least. But it's always, it's so competitive out there. So it was actually kind of funny. And being on the Kings at the time, it was always really funny. Practice days and stuff, guys would kind of get all over Drew and say, "Oh, are you going to hang out with your buddy? Are you going to go for dinner?" and stuff like that. And obviously at the time, with how good both of our teams were, it was pretty big rivalry, and it was kind of the running joke on the King side, at least.
So you can confirm that they were friends, were friends back then, even if they weren't hanging out much, and have always been friends then.
I would assume so. I don't think no one ever really followed up and wanted to make sure, but it's kind of the way it is throughout the league. Obviously, when you're playing against each other, it's so competitive, and especially in the playoffs, almost anything goes. So,
right.
I think they're still friends to the day now.
And you are in San Jose now. You're just moving in there. So, how is Logan doing? I know he's back in San Jose. Have you been out there skating with him or anything like that?
Yeah, no, I've seen him a couple times. He's coming in later than me, so I've been kind of the early bird and getting on the ice and in the gym by myself, but I've kind of caught the tail end of him getting in the gym and working out, and it looks like he's doing great. And he looks healthy, and hopefully he's going to be ready for camp or ready to play this season.
Who's kind of in there early with you? Who are the early birds with you right now?
Right now, it's me, a couple of the goalies, and Shaq's in town. I'm not gonna be rude and try and say his last name. So he's in there.
I say Muka Madulin.
Yeah, and he's looking awesome too. So I'm excited to for more of the guys to come into town and have some bigger skates and see what he can do. When we're on the ice, because he's a big boy.
You're not going to try it, Muka Madulin?
Nope.
Okay. Well, moving on to another defenseman, another old 67's teammate is Cody Ceci, who obviously the Sharks just traded for. Any good Cody Ceci stories from back then?
Yeah, I mean, I played with him obviously longer than I did with Cooch. I played with Cody for 3 seasons, I believe, and we had some good times. We had a really good team all 3 of the years that we were together, and I think my last season we lost in the conference final or something like that. But just good memories. Great player, kind of quiet, but once you get to know him, he opens up a little bit. So it's going to be fun to play with him again. I was texting him the other day, and obviously I'm not too familiar with the area, but kind of gave him the rundown from what I understand and what I heard when I first came here. So we'll see what happens when he gets here.
And okay, I'm going to blow some smoke up your butts a little bit here. So one of the things that's said about you and Cody Ceci is that you guys are great in the locker room. And my question here, specific question is, of course, there are a lot of good guys in hockey, right? That's what I've seen as a reporter and whatnot, right? And I'm sure that's what you've experienced too. There's not that many guys who are considered bad in the room. So what I'm asking you here is, what's that extra mile that a player shows to be considered like an exceptional leader, exceptional in the room? So speaking of you or Cody, or if you don't want to talk about yourself, just players in general that you've been around, what's the difference between being great or just good in a room?
Yeah, I mean, I think just in general, just trying to come to the rink every day, and some days are harder than others, but if you can kind of keep the emotions around the same or near the same level every day, then I think younger guys, especially now that I'm a little older, younger guys kind of look at that and try and bring that consistency into their game and their day-to-day routine. And I think that's something for me that I've gotten better at throughout my career, and something that I take pride in. So if that makes me a great teammate, then I'll just go with that. And I think it's just like the little things that go a long way. And like I said, some days are harder than others, but you have to show up and go to work and do your job. And at the end of the day, it's fun. So you gotta try and enjoy it as much as you can.
Would you say that's your trademark then as a room guy? Just your consistency of approach, always being in a good mood, positive mood?
Yeah, like I said, you try your best, and at the end of the day, it's not always easy, but if you can do that, and if that makes the team be more consistent in a positive way, then I think that leads to more wins and playing better, and everybody's getting better all at the same time.
And moving ahead to your playing career a little bit, obviously you started off with the Kings. Who taught you that, or who is the best at that in your younger days with the Kings?
Oh, I mean, you can look at pretty much anybody on that team, to be honest, and that's not just me, being biased or anything. I think everybody brought something different to the locker room, and whether it was a guy like Justin Williams, who was very vocal, or a guy like Dustin Brown, who was a little bit more reserved, but at the end of the day, when something needed to be said, he was always the guy to say something. So everybody would can kind of bring something different, and you kind of just try and soak it all up. And I was very fortunate to have all those guys bring me along and kind of teach me the ropes.
Well, I got to ask you, since you bring up Dustin Brown, obviously captain of the Kings, multiple Stanley Cup winner, but for Sharks fans, though, he's the guy that need Tomas Hertl. I think that came the year before you kind of started off, though. So from your side, was that ever anything that you had to sort of, I don't know, fans gave you guys crap about it, or you knew the Sharks wanted to get their pound of flesh for that?
No, like you said, that was before me, and I mean, I think I might have seen it, but I didn't really think much of it because I wasn't on the team and
Right.
or anything like that. So I think at the end of the day, Brownie played on the edge, and he he played hard. So I mean, obviously it sucks, and now that I'm on the Sharks, so I'm assuming that I'm going to hear some of it from the fans, and I've heard a little bit in the front office a little bit about it too. So it's unfortunate, but I think that honestly kind of built up the rivalry, and
Sure.
that was something. Obviously, I was on the other side, but something special to be a part of for sure.
Yeah, don't mind me, Tyler. I'm just trying to stir the pot a decade later. So
Yeah, you're doing a good you're doing a good job.
Well, let me move forward with that. That any of your old Kings teammates have they given you a hard time for signing with the Sharks? I know it's a long time ago, but still.
I mean, not really. I think at the end of the day, they know it's a business, and I think if you look at both of the rosters now, it's there's been a pretty heavy turnover from those days. So it'll definitely be funny going into LA and playing against Kopi and Dewey and Louis and all them, and wearing the Sharks jersey. But I'm excited for it, and it's just another great opportunity for me.
And let's talk about some of those great Sharks Kings playoff battles. Let's start first with 2014, your rookie year. And of course, what a run by you guys. Won 3 straight game sevens on the way to the Stanley Cup. First round, you guys came back against the Sharks down 3-0. So what are just your general memories of that series?
Yeah, I think it was honestly more of you try and be as positive as possible, and they were playing unbelievable. I think the first 2 games they put up 7 or 8 goals, whatever it was, and game 3 back at home, we played a little better, and I think Patty might have scored in overtime in game 3. A weird one. It kind of fluttered up and went over quick as head. I think we got in the locker room after the game, and we said basically that we played a good game. We should have had a better outcome, and now we got to take it one game at a time, and that's what we did, and eventually came back and won the series.
Who's kind of giving you crap on the Sharks about all the playoff stuff? Joe Will,
Oh, I mean, I've seen them. There hasn't been any talk about that stuff. I think it's, like I said, it's been 10 years since that.
Yeah.
So I think we've all kind of moved forward.
Sure. One more question about that series, though. What was the moment for you guys or for you in that series where you or the rest of the Kings players knew that you guys had the Sharks?
I want to say, in my opinion, I don't know if it would be the same for the other guys, but when we won game 5 in the Shark Tank, I think that was kind of the turning point in the sense of we know that we can win in their building now. And
right.
But at the same time, like I was saying, you have to take it one game at a time. But in my opinion, once we won game 5, it was like, all right, now we have a legitimate chance, and let's do this thing.
Well, thank goodness I could go into some positivity for the Sharks now here too. So, okay, back going to 2016 now, the Sharks got one on you guys. And what I remember, the Sharks won the first 2 games of that series, and then the Kings won game 3 in OT in 2016, the first round. And it seemed like at that moment when the Kings went in OT that based on past history, it might be time for the Sharks. I remember Drew Doughty, I think he said some stuff right after game 3, banging on the glass or whatever, right? So were you guys, I guess by the end of that series, when the Sharks do come back, were you guys surprised or maybe, I don't know, humbled a little bit that the Sharks came back on you guys?
No, I mean, I think at the end of the day, anything can happen in the playoffs, and we were both very good teams that year. I remember we had really good battles throughout the season as well, and it was just one of those things where, I mean, we won, like you said, we won game 3, but it's not easy playing in the Shark Tank, and they found a way, and I think they ended up winning maybe in overtime in game 5 in LA too. I can't remember, but it might have been Jumbo who scored actually. But yeah, no, I mean, anything could happen in the playoffs, and it was their time.
Who was your least favorite Shark to play against back then, and why?
Least favorite Shark. I didn't like playing against Joe Pavelski. We always had our battles, and we always. I mean, we're similar in size, so I feel like it was kind of easy for us to kind of go at it a little bit. And he was definitely a guy that he scored so many good big goals.
Right.
So that obviously kind of dug a little deper.
Did you ever lose him in front of the net, and then you had to explain the next day on video what happened there?
I don't think it was. I mean, maybe on the power play or when they were on the power play,
Yeah.
but he was always around the net, and I was trying to take care of the D. So I don't think I ever lost him. So
that's good. You're one of the few then.
Yeah, exactly.
How was Daryl Sutter, going back to your Kings time? How was he hard on you when you came up? That's what I've heard. But also too, how did he make you the player that you are today?
Yeah, I mean, Daryl's, in my opinion, one of the smartest guys in hockey, and especially one of the smartest that I've ever kind of met. And he did everything with a purpose. And he, early in my career, and honestly, kind of throughout my career, he held me accountable. And whenever my game slipped, he made sure to let me know. And I'm sure you've heard some of the stories of some of the video sessions. He was not shy to call anybody out. So I was one of the guys that would get called out every once in a while, but he definitely made me the player I am today. Him and Dean Lombardi both kind of told me what I needed to do to be successful in the NHL. And I try and take pride in the things that they taught me when I was younger, and still do it to this day.
Was there a particular time with Daryl that maybe a particular story that stands out, or something where back then you thought, why is this guy picking on me? But now you look back a decade later, 5 years later, like, oh yeah, I get it now.
I mean, maybe like little things, but at the end of the day, like I said, I feel like when I was younger and trying to, be a full-time NHL player, that he cared about me and thought that I was going to be a really good and really successful player. And I tried to, do everything that I could to impress him. And like I said, I still try and take pride and do those things that he taught me 10 years ago.
What was tough about those video sessions with him? Was it the length of it, or was it just how sharp he could be with his criticism?
I think it's more of just, when you mess up in the game, and that you're going to get called out in the video session. And,
yeah.
You're dreading to go into it, and it's coming. And every once in a while, one of the assistants would kind of come up to me and whoever was going to get called out and just be like, "Hey, just so you know, you're getting it today." And so you kind of prepare yourself a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's coming. But like I said, the guys in the room were awesome, and they'd make a little joke about it and forget about it, and you try and learn, and you try not to make the same mistake twice.
Right. A little good cop, bad cop with the coaching staff, which makes sense. But
for sure.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about sort of the end of your time with the Kings. They started going through a rebuild themselves. I believe that was sort of the only other rebuild that you've been a part of. Obviously, with the Sharks, I will be undergoing or be a part of a similar thing. So what lessons did you learn about how to handle your business in a rebuild that you can apply here with San Jose?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I think it's a little bit of a different scenario, where I feel like in San Jose now it's more of we're looking to go, up. I don't think it's more it's a tear down anymore. I think we're trying to get better, and we're trying to, compete now with teams. Obviously we have a young team, but we're going to be trying to compete. Whereas in LA, it felt like it was going the opposite direction, and it was definitely frustrating. But I think I had a bad season the 1 year, and I came back the next year in much better shape. And I tried to do the best I could, and I ended up getting moved. And obviously I was in the media of maybe getting traded for pretty much 2 years. So that was definitely hard, being in the rumors for the first time in my career. And I think it was just one of those things where you had to take it day by day and learn and try and get better. And that's what I did. The last season that I had, I tried to do the best I could. And at the end of the day, it obviously went in a different direction.
Was that sort of your greatest test in terms of having that consistency of effort every night? That's maybe where you really learned it, how to do that. Not effort, I'm sorry, consistency of attitude every day coming into practice and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in that scenario too, you have to try and look at it in a little bit of a selfish way too, because you want to still be in the league, and you still want to be an effective player. And So in that sense, you have to try and get better yourself too. And that's definitely one thing I learned. At the end of the day, it's a business, and you have to find a way to be successful. And like I said earlier, you have to, be consistent and show up to the rink and be ready to go every single day. And that's for sure one of the things that I feel like I definitely started to learn.
And looking over the track of your career, one of the most impressive things is that you really have seemed to have gotten better with age. Two of your 30-goal scorers, two of those 3 seasons have happened the last couple of years. Even back to 2020, 21, the COVID shortened season, you scored 28 goals in, I think, 52 games with the Canadiens. So obviously do the math there. That's another 30, 40 goal season there. So anyway, why have you gotten better with age?
I think just for myself, I just try and feel, obviously you can do whatever you want, but I've felt confident. And there are some games where, there's a stretch of games where I won't score. And at the end of the day, I look back to when I first came in the league and look at the little things that I was doing that would make me successful. And I try and, like I said, I try and bring that back. And when I know certain things that are going well in my game, I know that, goals and points and all that stuff will follow.
And are you looking forward to being part of the new 70's line with Macklin, Celebrini, and Willie Macklin?
Yeah, hopefully we can be as successful and do what we did in LA. That was a lot of fun. So we'll see what happens when they come here and camp and see kind of what happens there.
Well, Tyler, really appreciate your time here. Just got a couple more here, and I'll let you go here. I wanted to ask you one thing. You obviously have moved around a lot the last few years here. As an athlete, now with the Sharks, you have your no trade clause. You've never had this type of security in a place. So how will you kind of personally guard against kind of the opposite of the security, right? Which is to get complacent.
Yeah, no, I think it's one of those things where I know I'm going to be here for at least the 3 years. I hope to be here, longer than that, and the 4 years, and I hope to be here longer than that, and hopefully, I'm healthy. And it's one of those things where you want to, like we said earlier, it's the rebuild, in my opinion, is starting to go in the other direction, and we're trying to, compete and win games. And I want to be part of that. I want to, be part of the winning and the winning culture. And when those things happen, that makes the game a lot more fun. It makes it more fun to be at the rink. And the connection that you have with the guys inside the locker room and outside the locker room is what you play for. So that's definitely what I'm really looking forward to.
What is the worst part about moving? You've been in so many places last few years, or are you just numb to it by now?
Oh no, it sucks every time. It was definitely hard. I think last year was probably the hardest, just because the expectations in Jersey were so high, and things didn't go the same way. And then it was the relative shock of getting moved, and we were just really enjoying our time there. So that was definitely tough. So it definitely never gets easy, but like I said, it's unfortunately it's one of the tougher things that's part of the business. And now that I have the security, it's definitely a little bit of a breath of fresh air, and excited.
Okay, very last question here. Finally, you have arguably the very, very best nickname in all of hockey, but it is not safe for work. We can say it here, though. Top Titty for your name, TT, Tyler Toffoli, and your shooting ability, given to you by, I believe, Lyndon Vay. And so, number one, do you like that nickname? And honestly, is it the best nickname in hockey that you've heard, safe for work or not safe for work?
Yeah, that was a while ago. That's when I think we were 20 years old or whatever we were. And we were in the minors and having a good time. And it stuck for a little bit. I think a couple of guys might still call me it every once in a while, but I think it's started to fade away.
Well, I think it's an incredible nickname, and it applies with your game, your ability to shoot, and your initial. So I don't know. I may try to bring it back unless you're holding me back from it. So
it's all good. You can do your job. You can do whatever you want.
Okay. Well, Tyler, really, really appreciate your time here. Good luck with moving in, and we'll see you in a couple weeks here.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man.